your two hosts, Carlos and Dylan.
How you doing today, Dylan?
I'm good. Excited to be here talking about some football.
In terms of what were your thoughts for
Yeah, I think last Saturday's game was a very interesting one. I think, there's a lot of ups and downs. It kind of felt like we went from wondering why Florida wasn't pulling away to wondering how Florida was going to lose this game, and then wondering how Florida won that game. I think, offensive side of the ball, we saw the same problems we've been seeing for a while, just struggles and mismanagement. On the defense side of the ball, we saw struggles, man. I mean, Mississippi State left a lot of points on the board there.
Yes.
I think there was a lot of, breakdowns. I think the defense probably played their worst game, and, which is expected when your best corner goes out of the game super early. Cormani didn't play. You lost Dijon already. You have all these guys. They had to give Jamrock Grimsley his debut start, and he immediately got picked on. It was tough. I don't think he looked ready to be out there. With all the injuries and all that, he definitely wasn't 100%, and Mississippi State made them pay for that. And then, I made a tweet about it. Ben Hanks kind of got eaten alive out there. Shout out Jabari Flowers, though. I mean,
yeah, he had a good game.
Stepping up.
76.6.
Yeah, he had a really good game.
PFF rating.
Yeah, really good game for him. But, still, the young guys kind of got picked apart on defense. So, it felt like a game that Florida should have won, a lot more. But it also felt like a game that Florida should have lost due to the coaching mismanagement, due to, whatever it was. It was a really sloppy game from both sides. It felt like I was watching Billy Napier versus Billy Napier. Jeff Levy reminded me a lot of Billy Napier. There was some play calls there. I think at one point in the first half, Mississippi State was driving on us through the air because rightfully so. We had so many, inexperienced guys playing, and then they decided to go 4 straight quarterback draws, and we got the stop, and I was like, man, this is bad. So shout out to Alfonso Allen. That was kind of the player of the game. I'll be writing a feature on him soon. He was a ball player, man. I mean, I think in the media box, when everyone saw that he was about to be starting, we kind of all said, really? Like Alfonso Allen? I mean, we haven't seen him at all this year. And he made a name for himself, man. A great young man. I talked to him after the game. He's a superstar. So excited for him. But yeah, that game just felt like it fully encapsulated the Billy Napier era of just sloppy football when it shouldn't have been, and not, using your talent to the best of its ability.
Ironically speaking, the Napier era started on an interception, and it ended on an interception.
Yeah.
What do you think Billy knew he was already fired, even though Scott Strickland said on yesterday's press conference that he told him on Sunday?
Yeah. I mean, we were at the press conference, and it was the most somber press conference after shocking, surprising win that I've ever, seen, been a part of. Napier, you could just tell that he knew. I mean, he was almost crying. He was holding back tears when he was asked about his future here. And it felt like he knew for I don't know how long, and I don't know what the conversations were behind closed doors, but he knew. And, you got to give credit to the guy. You could tell how much this job has meant to him. You can tell how much the players mean to him. I mean, you saw the support from the players. That just shows he's a player's guy. The players love him, and he does well and by his players. But yeah, you could just tell, it was done, and everyone kind of knew it, but you could tell that even behind, closed doors, he understood that was his last game. And it was a tough watch, the press conference, because you could tell how much, there was a lot of sadness in Billy Napier, and no matter your opinion on the guy, it was hard to watch him, see his probably, the best opportunity he will get at the college football level, go down the drain.
What did you get from the press conference yesterday? is Scott Strickland really gonna cast a net, and or is there really a short list? Like Dan told me yesterday, there's only 4 to 5 candidates.
Yeah. I mean, the press conference was super. There was a lot of juicy information in it. It was nice to hear from Billy Gonzalez. It was nice to hear from Scott Strickland and kind of ask him some questions. For your question about the hiring process, I mean, Scott did say that they're going to, do a very extensive search, and, they have the time to do it. We have plenty of time to make our decision. So as much as, people want to say, oh, it's Lane Kiffin or nothing. Oh, it's, Eli Drinkwitz or nothing. It's Marcus Freeman. It's all these guys. There's so much time for them to decide which guy they really like and which guy they really want to go after. I think they've already done some preliminary. I mean, he tried to say, oh, for all the information out there, we haven't, but there's definitely been some looking into them. I think, they're going to take their time on this one, and they're going to be very aggressive. What I came away from that press conference with was, this is the right mindset you want Florida to have when going into a hire. They're going to be super aggressive for their guy. Their guy is not going to be the next up-and-comer like Billy Napier was. He's going to be a proven guy that they think can win them championships. That's all Scott was talking about, is championships. And I think I'm super excited because, I even the other day went back and looked into what Scott Strickland was saying when we hired Billy Napier. And he was mentioning this is the right guy for the job to, turn around the program, turn around the culture, blah, blah, blah. This time it's different. I mean, he's not saying we need the right guy. He's saying we need championships. I think he's fully bought into that. I mean, he mentioned it. Billy Napier left this program in a better spot than when he found it. And I think this program is ready to win championships. They just need the right guy at the helm. And that's kind of the way Scott Strickland and the decision makers are going into it. And I think that's a really exciting thing for Florida fans because, at the end of the day, we've talked so much about how talented this roster is, how much Billy Napier has built the foundation in a way, and he just couldn't get it done on Saturdays. So once you get a guy who can get it done on Saturdays, I mean, this program is going to be back where everyone wants it to be. And I hope this hire is the guy who can get it done, and I fully expect it to be. I mean, there's a couple options out there that I think will be good enough. I mean, obviously the number one is Lane Kiffin, but there's a couple guys I think, if they can retain this roster and they can continue with what Florida excels at, which is player, acquisition, the Florida job is an awesome job. So I'm really excited, and I think the mindset with Scott Strickland is the right one to have, and Florida fans should be super excited as well.
Do you think it's Lane Kiffin or bust? Because that's how the fan base is acting.
Yeah, I think that's how the fan base is acting, and I think the fan base is very misguided in a lot of things. I think the fan base,
I agree.
We've talked about it. The fan base is so unique and awesome in that way, but they're also a little crazy.
Yes.
I think that Lane Kiffin is probably the top candidate. I think everyone in the country knows that. Everyone that is looking for a head coach is like, oh, imagine if we could get Lane Kiffin. He's kind of the big name in college football right now.
Exactly.
But I don't think it's necessarily Lane Kiffin or bust. I think Scott Strickland is going to go out there and do his research on a bunch of names, and I think they'll land on, 3 or 4, like Dan has mentioned. Who knows if they have or not, but I think they will end up, and I'm sure, they already have a few that are leading the way and whatnot, but they'll land on 3 or 4 names that they feel comfortable with. And, the way Scott Strickland made it sound is they're going to be very aggressive for their number one guy. I think if I'm guessing, it's going to be Lane Kiffin, and they're going to be super, super aggressive, and they're going to make him say no more than, it's going to be, oh, let's hope he says yes. They're going to make him say no. They're going to make him say, I want to be at Ole Miss. They're not going to get outbid. They're not going to, give him everything he wants. So I think Lane Kiffin is the number one option, but I also think there's a couple of names out there that they'll probably end up liking. And, there's a couple of names out there that could be the guy to take Florida to the next level. I think it's not Lane Kiffin or bust, even though I would love Lane Kiffin here, and I think most of the fan base would too.
Yeah. Guys, we're going to do a wish list on one of the shows down the road. Don't panic. Another question, which I believe the answer is no to this. I tried to get Dan to answer the question. He gave me a no comment. In terms of Marcus Freeman, I don't believe he's coming to UF. He's an Ohio State Buckeye. How realistic is Marcus Freeman coming to Gainesville if it's not Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's not out of the realm of possibilities, but at the same time, I find it hard to believe that Florida would be his first option and he would be Florida's first option in a way. I think that it's kind of a mutual not going to work out situation. I think Florida, there are other names. There are about 5 or 6 other names I see as more realistic than him. I mean, like I said, there's always a way, and Florida's going to be super aggressive. So if they decide, we really want him here, you never know. They could get it done. I think people are overblowing how good of a job Notre Dame is. And, I think he's a great candidate. But Florida's always going to be one of the best jobs in college football. I mean, for one, you get to live in Florida. Everyone loves Florida. I know people try to downplay Gainesville, but guess what? Even if you don't like Gainesville, you're an hour from the beach. Anyway, you're living in Florida. These head coaches will have enough money to go buy a little house on the beach and spend their time there. You're getting all the Florida recruits who, if you are a functioning human being, you will be able to recruit exceptional players to the University of Florida. You see it with, not taking anything away from Billy Napier. I think he was a good recruiter, but you see all the talent that we brought in, even the guys like Vernell Brown III and Miles Graham. Those guys were Gators through and through. And, those are some of the best players in college football, in my opinion. So I think, whatever coach Florida wants, it will be hard for them to say no, and I think Florida is going to put their all into that coach. I don't expect it to be Marcus Freeman. I don't think Marcus Freeman is really a realistic, guy for this job. But at the end of the day, I know just as much as anyone else really does. I'm sure there's more guys locked in and getting information behind closed doors, but I'm just the same as you guys. I'm thinking Lane Kiffin, and we'll see from there.
All right, guys. Also, based on what you heard in the press conference, who's going to be calling plays? Because there seems to be confusion if it's going to be Russ or if O'Hara's only going to be talking and DJ in the earpiece, and then that's it.
Yeah. So, Billy Gonzalez came out and said, everyone thought it was going to be Russ Callaway. He ended up saying that Ryan O'Hara is going to call the plays on game day, and the game planning is going to be a collaborative effort led by Russ Callaway, but between Russ Callaway, Jabbar Jalouk, all the offensive guys. He even mentioned Rob Sale, I believe. So,
he did mention Rob.
Yeah, it's going to be Ryan O'Hara on game day. And it's going to be, a collaborative effort for game planning. And he mentioned, the reason for that is he wants, DJ Lagway to be super comfortable as he can be. And to do that, Ryan O'Hara is the guy. Ryan O'Hara is his position coach. They work together every day. Ryan O'Hara knows what Lagway's comfortable with. He knows what Lagway's not comfortable with. He's his closest coach. And I think, it's smart. I mean, we talked about it. You want your 5-star to be comfortable. I think Billy Napier even mentioned, how his offense wasn't working because he would say, Lagway's not healthy enough, blah, blah, this and that. You want Lagway to be thriving at what he's best at. And I think Ryan O'Hara, is the guy for that job. So I'm super excited about it. I mean, I put out a tweet, today about his last time as an OC was at Alabama A&M, and his offense was, it wasn't one of the best in the nation, but there was some positive signs. I mean, he averaged over 360 yards per game. They averaged over, I think they scored a touchdown on over 50% of their red zone drives, and they scored on basically every red zone drive, which, as much as that sounds like, yeah, obviously Florida, has struggled in the red zone this year. So I think that's a positive. He averaged, I think, around 23 points per game. And you got to remember, this is all at Alabama A&M.
There you go, guys.
He didn't have Dallas Wilson running routes out there. I promise you, he didn't have Vernell Brown. He didn't have DJ Lagway. So I think it's a super exciting thing. I think, why not? There's 5 games to save this season. Why not go with the guy that your quarterback's going to be most comfortable with? And we'll see how it works out, but I'm excited. I think change is going to be super fun. Even if it doesn't end up working out, it's going to be nice to see, a new play caller that we haven't seen for 4 years.
Going back to the Mississippi State game, and then we'll go back to the press conference. Guys, I'm going to be going back and forth because we just have to. It's both things happen at the same time. Did we win the game, or did Mississippi State lose the game?
Yeah, man, I think both teams tried to lose the game, and Mississippi State won in doing that. It was tough, man. Like I mentioned, it felt like I was watching Billy Napier versus Billy Napier. The play calling on Mississippi State side was really bad. I felt like, I mentioned it, that Florida's DB room was absolutely, demolished with injuries.
Destroyed, yeah.
And Mississippi State, quite honestly, had a wide receiver open on almost every passing play I could remember. And a lot of them were down the field. And, whether it was their quarterback missed them or, just we got pressure, whatever it was, I think Mississippi State could have ran away with that game if they were well coached and they were, they executed better, which is unfortunate because Florida has so much more talent than them.
Yes.
But yeah, it just felt like both teams were trying to lose that game. In the end, I mean, the simple way of saying it is Mississippi State was in field goal range and a game-winning field goal, and they threw an interception to the D lineman. It was a really bad game on both sides, super sloppy game. It's nice that Billy Napier went out on a win, but that was not a win to hold your head high on if you're, the Florida Gators, because it was really ugly, and I don't think either side impressed me at all.
What can we expect from a Billy G-led team? Can we see 4 or 5 wide out and not bubble screens?
Yeah. I mean, I think what a lot of people were mad about with Billy Napier is the tight end usage. And you got to remember, Billy Gonzalez was the wide receivers coach. So he's going to let his guys eat, man. He's going to utilize the wide receivers. I promise you, he's not going to prioritize the tight ends over his guys. I think just the energy that he had was different. I mean, Billy Napier was a calm guy. He was a great person, we knew that, but he was pretty calm in his demeanor, and a lot of people got mad at him that he didn't have that juice. Billy Gonzalez has that juice, man. He was in his first press conference, he was fired up, and I was laughing because, man, it seemed like he was ready to run out on that field. It seemed like he had some smelling salts going. So you're going to get an energized team. I think, you're going to get – he mentioned he wants to spread the ball out. He wants to be explosive on offense. I think, you'll see the wide receivers continue to eat, and that's very exciting. Just in the way that you want to watch fun football. If you're not going to be winning, at least you want it to be fun.
Exactly.
And I think it will be fun either way. And I think Florida still has a chance to win a lot of games. I mean, their talent is so good. If the coaching staff can just be, average coaching staff, they're going to win some games here. So I'm super excited. I think Billy Gonzalez is a perfect interim head coach in the fact that he's going to get the guys pumped up. They're not going to quit. They're not going to, not want to be on that football field. They're going to play for Billy Gonzalez. And I'm thinking the offense gets a little more explosive with the wide receivers. And I don't think Dallas Wilson, VB3, even Eugene Wilson and J. Mike are going to be disappointed by their usage in the next coming game.
Even Jordan Ba, I believe so too.
Yeah, Jaden Ball probably gets some.
Do you believe that we can see TJ also play? Because going back to a little bit to the Mississippi State game, I saw the sluggish type of DJ Lagway again in the Mississippi State game, making mistakes.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think DJ Lagway played a horrible game. I mean, there were mistakes in there, but I think we've slowly been getting a better DJ Lagway. And I think I've said this, countless times. I'm not expecting Tramel Jones to ever be out on the field when DJ Lagway is healthy enough to play football. I think he will play football. DJ Lagway is the quarterback for the Florida Gators. He's super talented, and I think it hasn't been the year we expected from him, and he hasn't. There's been games where he hasn't played good football, but I also think we're slowly starting to see the DJ Lagway we expected, and he's slowly getting more comfortable and better. And you got to give him some time as a guy who was in, we just fired the head coach for being a terrible offensive coordinator, and that's his quarterback. You know what I mean? So you got to give him some credit there. And I think, I'll say it once, I'll say it a million times. Florida goes as far as DJ Lagway can take them, and I think he will, in these next 5 games, I think we see a lot of improvement, and I think we end the season on a high note with DJ Lagway.
I got to ask the next question. I'm going to bounce off that question. I got to ask it for Gator Nation. I kind of feel the answer, but I don't know. We don't know. But I got to ask it because it's in the air. Is DJ a true Gator, or is there a chance he can go to Baylor because of his father's?
Yeah, I mean, they asked him in the press conference. They said, "Are you, a Florida Gator?" And as much as, I'd love to say, "Oh, he said he was a Florida Gator, so it's over." You never know with these situations. He said, "Oh, I'm a Florida Gator," but he also said, "I'm focused on these next 5 games."
Exactly.
And we'll go from there. So I think it's a lot to do with, the coach that comes over here. It's a lot to do with how he connects with that coach. I think, the relationship with Billy Napier was a big part of him coming here, and I think he needs to have a good relationship with the coach to stay. But, I've said this before. I think that DJ Lagway is a very loyal person. I think he's very bought into being a Florida Gator, and so is a lot of this roster. And, it's tough because when your coach gets fired, it's not just about, you're a Florida Gator, so you have to stay a Florida Gator, or you're leaving because you hate this program. There's a lot of factors that go into it. I think the main thing is just how much you connect with the next coach, because you never know. I mean, the coach could come in and say, DJ Lagway, I respect you, brother, but I want someone else to be quarterback. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
There's a lot of time for that decision to be made, and that decision will be made, very far from now, at least 5 games from now in the offseason. So I'm not panicking over it. I think, his answer was what you expected it to be. I'm a Florida Gator, but at the same time, I'm just focused on these next 5 games. I think everyone's focused on these next 5 games. I think the only people that I'm really like, yeah, this guy's a Florida Gator for good is Miles Graham, because that guy was just born a Gator. Vernell Brown, born a Gator. There's guys like that are going to be Gators. And there's some guys that you're going to always be worried about until, you're starting game 1 the next season and they're playing. So I'm pretty confident that DJ Lagway's back. But at the same time, there's plenty of time for things to change in that situation.
Guys, I'll give you a hypothetical before I ask him the next question. If it's Lane Kiffin, put in your brain that he can bring the current quarterback from Ole Miss over to Florida. So
Yeah.
it might not be DJ Lagway.
Yeah, very true. I mean, that's kind of where it's at is you never know what the next coach has in mind. I think DJ Lagway, everyone knows he's talented, but sometimes a coach might come in and say you don't fit my system. I think it's better for us both to get a fresh start.
What do you think of the prospects of the Louisville coach? I'm throwing out names just to throw out names, becoming an option for the Gators if it's not Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I've actually heard his name brought up a lot, and I think there's real smoke to that. I think, Florida is looking for an offensive head coach. They want a little different than what we just had. They really want, a guy who's had a lot of success on offense, who's going to, air it out, spread it out. And I think Jeff Brom, his resume speaks for itself. I mean, he's been impressive. I don't think he's going to be the top option on the board. I think if I had to guess, he would come in around third or fourth, of the guys that I've been hearing.
Yes.
But
that's what I've been hearing also.
Yeah, I think that he's a real option, and we're so early in the process that he might be third or fourth right now. But if they bring him in and they talk to him and they buy into what he is preaching and they talk to people around him and they buy into that, he could shoot up that board real quick. You know what I mean? So I think he's definitely a realistic option. And I think, I'd be open to it. I haven't done my research as much as, diving into all the nitty gritty, but I like what I've seen from Jeff Brom. I obviously like that he can beat Miami. That's number one that we saw our last coach not be able to do. So
yeah, I agree.
I think they have a type, and it's successful coaches who've proven it and are offensive minded guys. And whether it's Kiffin, whether it's Eli, whether it's Jeff Brom, they're going to get their guy. And I'm excited for all three of those names are guys I'm interested in.
Could we see I asked this to Dan yesterday during the live, and he said no, but I want your perspective on it. Could we see a hot coordinator name, jump in the list and be the next head coach at Florida?
Yeah, I think there's a 0% chance of that. Obviously, again, I say 0% chance, but that could come back to bite me. But
I don't think so, but go ahead.
I just think, Scott Strickland has made it very clear that he is going to make a hire of someone that has proven they can win football games. And he's made it very clear that they learned lessons in their last two hirings. And I think Billy Napier's lesson that they learned was, we can go get the flashy up-and-coming name where we think this guy could all of a sudden, be a great coach, but we're the University of Florida. Let's go get the guy that is proven that we've seen can win football games. I think there's, I know you might think differently. I think there's a 0% chance they take a chance on a guy, offensive coordinator. I think Scott Strickland knows that this is his chance to make the right hire, and this is kind of his chance to prove himself in a way because, Todd Golden was a great hire, but other than that, he's kind of whiffed in a way, and I think the fan base has made it very clear to him that they haven't loved what he's been doing. So I think this is, from what I, heard from him, and my take on it is I think that he's out there to prove himself. I think that he is very confident in this hiring process, and I think that he is very determined to make it the most splash hire that everyone is going to appreciate. So I just don't think OC's, out there. I don't think a group of 5 coaches out there. Alex Galosh is a guy that I think in another world would be one of the names on the list, but I just don't think that, Scott Strickland is at that point confidence-wise and with the fan base where, he feels comfortable not hiring some guy that everyone is going to want and that is already a proven name.
Do you think they're going to back up the Brinks truck for Lane Kiffin in the range of $93 million to $100 million, not only including him, but if he wants to bring some staff members like Charlie Weiss Jr., if it were to happen, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but are they going to back up the Brinks truck for Lane Kiffin and his staff members if they're going to come to Gainesville?
Yeah, I'd like to think they are. I think, he mentioned something that stood out is he said, we're going to be smart with our resources. I don't think they're necessarily going to want to say, all right, blank check, here you go, Lane Kiffin, make us pay you, a bunch of money. But
exactly.
He also said, right after that, he said, we're going to be smart, but we're going to be competitive in an offer. I don't think they're going to let, anyone beat them in an offer. I don't think they're going to play it slow. I think, like I mentioned in the last answer, Scott Strickland sees this as an opportunity to kind of solidify himself. I mean, you just hired Todd Golden. If you make the right call on this, Gators football head coach, then people start talking about you a lot differently. And, your job is feeling a lot safer. And the whole, feeling around you is a lot better. I think he understands that, and I think he's motivated to make the right call here. So, I mean, how I'm reading it is Florida is going to be extremely aggressive to get their guy. And if it's Lane Kiffin, then yes, I think that we pay up for him. And I think, in the end, we get a guy that it's not that we're settling on a guy. I think we're going to get the guy we want.
Next question, basically to kind of calm down these rumors. They're a realistic shot. Dan calmed it down for me yesterday, and I'm pretty sure you're going to calm it down for me now. Is there a realistic shot that John Gruden wears the orange and blue?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think John Gruden wants to coach NFL football, and if he gets an opportunity in the college level, maybe he takes it. I don't think Florida goes that route. I think, for one,
you guys heard it again. 2 sources.
Yeah, I don't. It's a fun idea to throw out there, but I don't think so. And the other thing that you kind of have to look at is, right, Florida, and I've mentioned Scott Strickland feels like this needs to be a slam dunk hire. We just saw UNC go out and get a former NFL coach who's had who's going to bring a lot of attention to your program. John Gruden has had an interesting past. He's going to bring a lot of attention, and they're flaming out right now. Bill Belichick is, causing mayhem. I think UNC probably would not go back and do the same thing.
Nope.
And I think Florida is going to look at that and say, why would we even, take the risk that John Gruden is half as bad as what's going on over there? You know what I mean? So I think they understand that there are options that are safer and there are options that are probably will end up better anyways. I don't think John Gruden is worth the risk, and I think they understand that.
One more, and then we'll get to more questions, more realistic questions. Is Urban Meyer coming back to Florida?
Yeah, that's a fun one too. I don't think so either. I think Urban Meyer, I think Urban Meyer's done coaching. That's just me. I mean, the Jacksonville stint was not great for him, to say the least. And I just think, he's proven it. He had his legacy, and I think he's done. That being said, you never know, man. It's college football. I like to have fun. So, it could happen. It could happen, but I don't think so. I think that's
I'm asking because Gator Nation's putting them on the list, and he's even on a bet odd thing, and I was like, this is not going to happen. He's not coming back.
I don't think so. I think it's safe to say no.
Yeah. In terms of a short list, from what you've heard, what have you heard? Have you heard anything? We know the number one target is Lane, but after Lane, who's there?
Yeah, from what I've heard, and it's nothing confirmed. It's nothing super strong, but I've obviously heard Lane. I think Lane is their number one option. Number two, in from what I've heard and from what I've been reading from the situation, is Eli Drinkowitz. I think they're very interested in him because he kind of feels like Lane Kiffin at less flashy and at Missouri, which Missouri, you forget that Missouri was almost Vandy level in the SEC until he got there. They were not very good and no one really respected them. And he's turned them into a great program. So I think he's number 2 from what I'm hearing. And then from there, we mentioned Jeff Levy. Other than that, I haven't heard too much. I think they're going to extend their search. I think Alex Galesh, they're going to probably look at him. I don't think he's, I don't think he's going to end up being someone that they want, but they're probably going to have to look at him. I think
Jeff Levy's the guy from Mississippi State, right?
Who?
Jeff Levy?
Oh, did I say Jeff Levy? Definitely not Jeff Levy. Sorry.
I was about to say.
If I said Jeff Levy, after what I saw in the swamp, it better not be Jeff Levy. I'll tell you that much. I mean, wow, why am I forgetting his name? The Louisville guy we just talked about.
Brom.
Jeff Brom. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Jeff Brom is the third option. I think Kenny Dillingham is kind of a sleeper. He's got the style that they like. He's made some splashes. He's made Arizona State a really good team. I don't know how realistic it is, but I think they definitely look into him. But yeah, that's where my list ends. Those top 3 is what I'm pretty comfortable with saying that are the 3 guys they're most interested in. And then from there, I think it's more of they're going to go out and look at every option, and whoever grabs their interest might end up in the top 5.
Just to play devil's advocate, I don't like him, but I'm going to throw it out there. Jedd Fisch.
Yeah, I think he's going to be someone they look into. I think he's unlikely because, for one, he's not the splash hire. I think in another landscape, maybe if it was before Billy Napier flamed out, maybe if it was the same hiring cycle as Billy Napier, Jedd Fisch would have been someone they were interested in. But I think, like I mentioned, this is the opportunity for Scott Strickland to, right his wrongs. And I think he's too risky, taking him from Washington, who, he's done a good job there. I respect him. He's had some really talented teams. I just don't think that Florida is, he's not the type of coach that Florida wants to make a hire right now. And I think they want to be, they want it to be a big name that everyone is going to be behind.
Okay. Do you think based on giving him the interim position, Billy, I know it's the coach that has to decide, but do you think Billy will be considered to stay here? He's a Gator through and through. I think he has roots in Gainesville. I don't think he would want to go anywhere else. Do you think Billy's going to be the receivers coach?
Yeah, I think I think he wants to be here. I think if he's offered the job, he'll probably be here. But you mentioned it. It's the coach's decision. I think, it's a tough one because you never know you don't even know what coach is coming in. So you never know what, ideas they're going to have for staff, what connections they're going to have. But I think Billy Gonzalez has done a really good job. I know people kind of like to take it away from him and say, oh, well, listen, Dallas Wilson was always going to be good. Vernell Brown was always going to be good. But, Vernell Brown was always going to be a Gator and, all this and that. But I think, people really love Billy Gonzalez in the building. I think the players love Billy Gonzalez. I think he's done a great job. And, I'm not concerned at all with the wide receiver room right now. So I'm high on Billy Gonzalez. I think he deserves a shot, but in the end, it will be what the next coach decides.
Have you heard anything as a speculative date as to when the next coach, the next official head coach, should be in the building, or by when they? Because Dan told me he doesn't expect anything till after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I think Dan is very right on that. I think, there's still a season going on, even though it feels like ours is over. If if you want Lane Kiffin at this job, he's not just going to say, all right, Ole Miss, I know we're still with a shot to make the college football playoff, but I'm going to go announce that I'm the Florida Gators head coach. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to have to wait a while. And I think that's why Scott Strickland is so confident because, you know, he mentioned it. The last hiring cycle kind of felt like they were rushing it a bit. And I think they're not going to rush it at all this year. They're going to take their time. And I think that's, you know, the smart strategy. So we'll have to wait a little bit. I know, you know, we're all going to be itching to see who it is, but we're going to be waiting a little bit.
Gator Nation, you got to remember the portal rules change. So they can't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they want to leave without knowing the coach, they got to sit out the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's big.
So that's why he did what he did. Now, I'm going to ask you one last question, then we'll get out of here. Why do you think they waited to the second bye instead of the first bye? What was the point?
You know, I think it was a couple of different things. I think we all kind of expected it to be in a bye week, and I think they wanted to give him more time to maybe turn the season around. I know, you know, all the fans were saying that's BS, but I think that was, you know, a big part of it. I think they wanted to be comfortable with moving on from him now that the season is basically over. They don't have a chance to make a magical run like last year. I think, you know, I think the clarification on the transfer portal was big. I think it was hard when if you fire him, all your players are able to just walk out the door. You know, I think that now they feel a lot safer. And Scott Strickland even said, like, I like that rule a lot. So I think it was a couple of different things, but the bye week is huge for having an interim because he gets a whole 2 weeks before he has to go play Georgia. So he's going to have a lot of time to work with his guys. And yeah, I think it was more of just, you know, at the same time, if it's going to take till the offseason to hire a head coach anyways, why not give Napier, you know, I know a lot of fans wanted him gone immediately. Why not give him another chance? I mean, as much as I'd love to say, oh, we could have won one more game with Billy Gonzalez at the helm, at the same time, you know, that's a lot to be betting on to make a move, you know, for not a lot of good reasons. So I understand why they waited a little bit.
All right, guys. Sorry we didn't talk too much about the Mississippi State game because it was just there was nothing really to talk about. We won it. We squeaked it out, and we did focus on it a little bit, but it's more important to start talking who might be the next head coach, and who's going to stay and is Billy going to stay, all that kind of stuff. But we'll get into our list in another show. Remember to follow Dylan on Twitter at DylanOlive_UF and follow his work at Gators SI. Follow the Gators SI family. Cam Parker, Tyler, Kyle, and I'm missing a couple names. But
we
follow
don't care.
them. Follow them, and like always, stay positive, stay on your grind, and like always, we love you guys. I appreciate the support, and go Gators. Peace.